Hey friends, I just had a nice nap. I don't know if it's nice. I might be more tired now than I was. I fall asleep, just go, yoo-hoo, yoo-hoo. Hey Rachie,
Hi, Kimmy. I was just about to cut and paste this goddamn link to you.
do you think I can do the podcast like this? Do you think this is a problem?
I think it's totally appropriate. What's happening though? Are you sick?
No, I was just sleeping.
I have the mute ability, so I can mute you if you start snoring.
Okay, great.
Welcome to Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism Podcast. We are Jen, Kim, Rachel, and Jaime. Take a seat at our table as we share with hope, humor, and honesty. Hello, and welcome to Talk Like a Mother Podcast. Thanks for joining us. This episode, we are going to be talking about our outer selves as a continuation of our self-love series. And we're going to discuss different elements of outer self. We're going to talk about the masks we put on and the personas we portray. And then going along with that is the perception of us and how that all relates to our inner self and the self-love, and maybe hitting on some of that in relation to us being parents to autistic individuals. Anyway, I thought we'd get started by kind of discussing how we feel we are perceived. And then in a little bit, we can kind of get into like how we tried, like the persona and the masks we feel we put on, but how overall we feel we are perceived, what people see when they look at us. And I know that relates to a little bit of like inner self, because obviously that's our perception of that. But I think that will help explain why we mask or, portray ourselves the way we do. Anyway, does anyone want to start, or you guys want me to start?
Take it away, Jaime Ramos.
I mean, it's hard to know how you're perceived. And I think that's something that for me coming into adulthood, and even in like probably my teen years, I had to kind of figure out, or people say things to you. Like I was talking about my resting bitch face, and they're like, oh yeah, because you never look happy, or you like saying these things to me as if I can see myself. And I'm like, oh, I guess I do put that out there. And it's hard trying to navigate that when you don't see yourself. And I think that's maturing and coming into adulthood, is trying to figure out what people are perceiving of you. And I feel like a big part of that is our physical appearance. And I think some of that we can obviously control through grooming or different things. And some of that we can't control. I was joking before we got on, like, we were all born with the faces we have. Yes, some people can change those faces, but the most of us really can't majorly change our faces. Or I'm 5'2", I've always been short, and so it is funny how people kind of treat you differently when you're short. And that's something I didn't really realize until I was older. And it's not like a horrible thing, I don't have any traumas from it or anything like that, but people just perceive you a certain way. Like I was always like the cute little friend growing up and all that kind of stuff because I was short. And I'm like, nothing about my personality is really cute or
I
anything.
am more than a sidekick.
Yes, exactly.
I was like 5'2", you towered over little short me, but carry
I
on
mean,
with your bad self.
that's why I'm friends with Jen, so I can feel better about myself.
But it's so frustrating when you're in one pocket, like, because you always get referred to that way. So wherever you go, you're always that the little short. Oh, you're so short. My thing was I was tall, and I hated it. I
Yeah.
hated when people would, everybody would always say it though. So it's like, I get it, I'm tall. It's just like so funny how people like say the same thing over and over and over, and you're just like,
I got
hey,
it.
thanks.
Thank you. Or like the assumptions people make based off of that. Like I will be completely honest in that. Like, I mean, I've talked about this before, kind of jokingly on the podcast. A lot of people think I'm Hispanic, and I am of mixed race. My grandfather is Filipino, and so I am part Filipino, which is like I love about myself. And I would love being Hispanic too. My husband's Hispanic. I think it's great, but people do treat you differently. I didn't even really think about that because like most of my cousins and my family that I hang out with are on the white Caucasian side. And, I just grew up identifying, feeling like I was white. And as I got older, really into middle school and high school, I was like, oh, people do treat me differently. Like I've talked about, like, I'll be out in a store and people will assume that I'm like a worker and stuff sometimes. Or people all the time will ask me if I speak English and stuff like that. I'm like, yeah, I can't speak anything else. But it is like those perceptions and those things that you can't control about yourself. It's just like, I mean, I guess I could go to great lengths to control that about myself. Like I have had blonde hair and stuff before. I don't
Oh,
know if
I'd
that
have a
helps.
heyday with that one.
I loved that blonde hair. It's so funny that you say that, Jamie, because every store I'm in ever, people always think I work there. I have no idea why. And I'm always like, well, sometimes I have my Here We Grow Up, like my work shirt on, which is just like a t-shirt with the daycare name on it, which like looks nothing like the Walmart uniform, but they're always like, but I'm always like, yeah, I think it's like down at one of that aisle though.
So it just,
Aisle 9 to the left.
It's like looks at me, you work here. I'm like, I don't know why. It's just so random.
but
Right.
it is. It's and that and some of those things you don't know why people perceive you certain ways. So I think that's a hard part of outer self.
I get like, are you okay? A lot. And I think that like A, I've got a scowl. B, resting bitch face. C, I am tired. D, I am not okay. E, like, I'm sorry that you can see that from afar. You know, like, sorry. Or people see this other view of like confident and like I've got this together and I've got a goal and I'm gonna go get it. And like I either stomp in or you see me like saunter and you're like, oh shit, she needs life support. You know, I I feel like it's either. I have this example that I was thinking about when we've been talking about this episode, and it's funny, you guys all know all the Minnesota moms that I hang out with and kind of do the Miracle League with or the music class. So you know many of our peeps and our listeners do too, I guess. There is a friend of ours that has said something like, and it's just at like mom's lunches, like, I just want to be the mom drinking a coffee about it. And I can feel that there are times I've shown up to the music class or to the Miracle League or whatever, and I literally have a coffee in my hand and I'm becoming a bleachers mom, or I'm like trying to not be on the floor with Celie Flanagan. I'm trying to be on the other side of the fence at Miracle League. Like I'm deliberately using the safe place because there's a door mom, because there's a lights mom, because there's a fence mom to like step back from her because she's safe enough that I come with something filling my hands and something filling my time. And I've got this to fidget with instead of being super attached to Celia or being so attentive to her. So, well, one mom is thinking, like, oh, it's so nice to sit in the back row and drink your coffee. You've got that kind of kid. I'm like holding myself like I'm chained to the chair, just holding the coffee, trying to not be in the mix with.
Yeah.
So the perception is so different than what my reality is. Meanwhile, if you weren't attending that music class with me, you might be like, what is with this mom drinking 54 shots of espresso at 7 o'clock at night? And why does she look like that? Like, it's just all the perception when really I'm just trying in that moment and I'm using these tools, it's messed up because I feel, and I've said this on my inner self, that like I'm a mess and I'm either working through it or it's taken me down. Anyway, I'm like sitting there using a tool like a coffee at this music class, and somebody else is like, "Oh, that looks pretty good," like, dang it.
Must be nice.
Yeah.
When you were talking about the Minnesota moms, I was just thinking about, so for me, like my I don't know. I mean, I always think about work stuff for how much sort of my, I think, outer and inner self has changed with my daughter's diagnosis. I used to do a lot of, public speaking, public training, symposiums. So I was kind of, I don't want to say the star of the show, but I emceed the entire event. I was on a microphone, I was on a stage, I was doing, and I think I'd literally rather stick needles in my eyes now than have to do any of that. So I think, people viewed me sort of in one way, and now I'm so withdrawn from the person that I was that I often think about that, like what a difference I am. And I don't just mean like physically, just literally who I am to the core now. If that makes, I very much identify it with work, if that makes any sense, because that's just changed so much.
I think that's a huge part of that. And like the persona piece of it, it's like what we put out there. And then that might change because of our inner selves or things that happen to us. And if those people don't see that change or know we've changed inside and all of a sudden we feel different, their assumption is that we're still that same old person. We were talking about last time something like still feeling one way when the outside view looks the other way. I was just thinking about that with being pregnant, how all the time I would, like when I was like huge pregnant, I would forget that I was pregnant. And I would look down and be like, oh yeah, my belly's huge. Like there's could be such a disconnect there for so many reasons for people.
Speaking of being pregnant, I was 7 months pregnant with Kaya, and I did a trade show with NIMC. There was 650 people throughout the weekend that came through that door. And I was pregnant and in heels and I didn't miss a beat. And now it's like, I can't wait to get off the stage and you just find me in my hotel room. Don't talk to me. I don't want to have a cocktail. I just want to go. It's a very big shift.
Yeah.
very big shift.
It's interesting too, Jamie, because it's like I don't really know how others perceive me, I guess. And then the other part of that is like I feel like I'm perceived in different ways by different people and the different roles that I have. Like in work, I'm perceived one way. For my staff, I'm kind of like everyone's mom. But then when it's like, clients, it's more like I'm viewed more in like a professional way. Do you know what I mean? Like they don't know
Yeah.
anything really about my personality, about my personal life. I feel like just different people in my life view me in different ways. And like I've talked about before, like I have a lot of anxiety, depression, and people are always like, no, we don't see that because you can't see that it's on the inside, people. A lot of people perceive me as, very confident, and I can be in certain situations. Like I feel like I am confident in certain situations, but then in other situations I'm less confident. But like I'm still perceived as confident. Like it's just funny. But I feel like in the different roles, in my life, like when my kids were little, I feel like I was kind of like just perceived as a mom. Like I didn't work for 5 years. I had my kids were spanned 11 years between my youngest and my oldest. I mean, I had four of them. I was always just juggling kids, and then I'd be juggling other people's kids on top of my kids. I feel like that's just kind of like what you're perceived as, like,
Yeah.
kind of like, I don't want to say just a mom, but like, I mean, I feel like I also identified that way for a long time too. Like I've talked about, like, it's weird with your kids getting older because it's like, of course I'm still a mom. I'm always going to be their mom. And especially with Alyssa, like she's not going anywhere anytime soon. So it's like, I'm still obviously taking care of she's an adult, but she's childlike. It's just like a weird shift when like, that's all you've kind of identified with, I guess, is like being a mom, driving kids here and there, doing this. It's everything that you do for them and everything that like is happening. I was a dance mom. Yeah. And then that kind of shifts. And it's like, sometimes you feel like you're just like floating, or people see me as like an autism advocate or like an autism mom, or people that know me in like different avenues, but it's like you're kind of like all those things and none of those things at the same time.
Yep.
I know that doesn't make sense, but like
None
it's
of
like
those things fully
you
because
don't
you're all of them all the time.
yeah. And like I really relate to what Jamie was saying about the RBF because I definitely have that. But on top of that, I have really bad ADHD that like I've acquired as an adult or probably already had, but like much worse with like life becoming overwhelming and so many different things that like I'll just be thinking about. So he'll be like, "What's the matter?" And I'm like, "Oh, nothing." And he's like, I was like, "Oh, I was just thinking about like XYZ or like," you know what I mean? So it's like
Yeah.
I
people
get
like
that.
it
That's what
makes you
I'm
look like
saying. People are like, you look in turmoil right now. What's happening in there?
Like I'm thinking
you're like
about a
I'm just
show
trying to
from
figure
last
out
night.
what we need for dinner. Like I don't know. It's so interesting, I guess, but yeah, different people definitely, I feel like, perceive you in different ways. And I perceive myself in different ways sometimes, which I know, like, we kind of did talk about, like, the whole inner self thing, but it's like I perceive myself in different ways, kind of depending on how I'm feeling about, like, life and what's going on, how tired I am. I feel like that has a huge, like, portion of, like, how I feel like I'm definitely more negative and, like, more angry quicker and stuff like that when I'm really tired. And then, if, as opposed to when I'm like feeling better, then I don't like fall into those things as much. So, I mean, I guess at those times I'm probably being perceived as a bitch.
That's a good segue into talking about how we mask or the persona we feel like we put out. This is where like being a parent comes into me. And I think especially like a parent to a child with disabilities, where it's like, I don't have as much time, I feel like, as I did when I was younger to mask or be concerned about the persona I was putting out. I
Yeah.
think a lot. So, I mean, as some of you know, I grew up very religious. And I think this happens with most kids, no matter what. You act differently at home than you do out other places. And so we all mask in that way. Like a lot of us know masking in the way of like autism, that our kids mask in public for certain ways, but everyone masks, at
Well, yeah,
some
and it's
point.
your comfort level too, right?
Yep. And so it's like
Comfort level.
who you're willing, who I am with you guys isn't necessarily who I would be at the PTA meeting
Well,
or
that's a damn shame, Jane. You
well,
should be real you
I
at the
send my
PTA.
husband to the PTA meeting,
I
so that's
know
how
who
that
goes to
happens. That's my
DP.
mask is my husband. I gained some height and weight for that one. But do you guys feel like you even are worried about that anymore? I think for me, it comes up like when we had the retreat last year, all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm probably 20 pounds heavier than I should be. And I'm supposed to go to this retreat in like a couple months. Or I haven't plucked my eyebrows in 6 months because the only place I go is to take my son to therapy. Like all these different things. It's like, whoa, that's when it like hits me of like me becoming more worried about my outer self. But like in my day to day, I'm not as concerned because I'm so engulfed in raising children, autism, appointments, anxiety, everything else.
I think that this life totally leaves fewer F's to give to all the other things. Like it just does. You are stripped down to so many brass tacks parts of this life, and like so much effort has to go into maintaining those things that, yeah, I have way fewer to give, way fewer. But I also feel like for me, my inner self and outer self blend so much when I'm under the shelter of within my home and sort of this bubble where all of it is such a jumble that I don't care because nobody's perceiving me. I'm just making these phone calls, and you all have to be a strong mom to get these phone calls done or that intake done or that. Like, I feel like this life has given me more of that, like, hound dog nature. Like, I'm in fight or flight. And so I'm fighting like we're still fighting to get everything because we're fighting to get everything. And that, I don't know, like, it's all just such a jumble. What I perceive, who I am, the doubt that I carry, the voice that I have on the phone, the strength that I use to write an email. Like it's so mashed together in just like within parenting. And yeah, try and judge me as a it's like not going to be half of what I say to myself. And it's also probably going to be wrong because you don't get this, you know? Not you guys, not our listeners.
You know, I used to care. You know, she was young. She was 2.5, was diagnosed. I still worked all the time. I didn't talk about the autism. I worked through it all the time. A lot of people for a really long time didn't know. And then the more I talked about it and the more I was open about it, the more I wrote about it, the more kind of, I think, raw you feel about it. And I think that also changes a little bit about how you even kind of walk through it outside of the autism life. But then also for other people, it always ends up being when if we were to have lunch or it's always that either how's Kaya doing in that sort of sad tone or wow, she's really gotten better, huh? You know, so I feel like I pull back from that sort of socializing aspect of things with people too, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You know, there's always that sort of same,
Yeah.
which changes
how you carry yourself and how you engage in the surroundings.
Yeah.
Right?
It's your persona, like what you put out. And how much do you care to kind of mask anymore? Or
And I don't anymore. Like now I don't.
and I don't know if that's because of our life situations or just is that part of the maturity is that like maybe that is those I don't give a F is matching the inner self. Like this is me. This is what you got.
I really feel too, like I think of like things like when people are like, "Oh, hi, like, how are you?" And I'm like, "Fine, I'm great." And they're like, "Well, how's it going with Alyssa?" "Great, everything's great." Like, yeah, it's good. But like, it's literally never the case. Not never. I mean, I am great sometimes, but like, I was great when I was on my cruise. Um, but like, it's no matter what's going on at home, like I answer the same. You know, like you almost feel like you have to put on this front, or maybe I don't know if I feel like I have to, but you just because do you really want to hear about it? Do you really want to hear about how, you know, my kid's like throwing us off on the ground and she's screaming and she's anxious and she's, you know, all these things or whatever may be happening. Not to say it's always like that. Like sometimes it's fine, but you know, there are times when it's anything but fine. But does this person really want to hear that? Like, I don't feel like they do. They don't really understand it either. And it's just like, you know, so I feel like in that sense, I've learned to mask like from like a really long time ago. It's more understood, more talked about now in general, but it's still like the same thing. And then back to what Jen was just saying, like, yeah, it would always be like, is she talking yet? First thing, nope, she's still not talking. She's nonverbal. She's still not talking.
Thank
And
you.
the second question would always be is, oh, do you think she's gonna talk? Don't know. I don't know if she's gonna talk. Like, but like she's a whole person without being able to talk. So it's just like, but of course, like I know people don't mean anything bad by it. Like it's just like a natural thing because they don't, you know, a lot of people that I know, they don't know. They've never known anyone who couldn't talk. Like she's the only person they know like that. So it's like, and this kind of like stopped as she got like to a certain age, but it's like, and then everyone's just always like, you're so strong, you're so great with her, like I don't know how you do it. And it's like, but it kind of puts that thing on you where you feel like you have to be a strong person,
Yeah.
and you feel like you have to present yourself that way because like nobody wants to listen to you. I'm not talking about like the people that are, in my inner circle, obviously. Yeah, that's different. But even people in my own family, like they would make comments. And I really don't think you can just truly understand what this life is like unless you're living it, or like you're literally witnessing it. Things like, yeah, like I used to feel like a lot of guilt, especially about my son, because he really got the shit under the stick. Like he was only 5 when she was diagnosed. We were already going through a year and a half of really hard times before that. So like probably started when he was like 3.5, 4. And he just always got the back seat. It's just the way it had to happen. Like it wasn't the, and we obviously try to make up for that in other ways. So people would be like, oh, that's just family. Like that's just what you do for family. And it's like, no, it's not just family. Like he's literally having to sacrifice and go it out time and time again, whether that's even time with his parents or being able to go places. Like that's not just what you do for family. That, you know what I mean? It's like they don't have the understanding of like what that's like. So it's just almost feels like a waste of breath to try to explain that to people, like even people in your own family. So I feel like then you just put on that thing of like, no, everything's great, everything's fine. Yeah. And they're just like, wow, you're just so strong. It's like, yeah, because I'm not going to sit there and be crying about it. And I feel like that becomes kind of a habit, which for some people, I think it helps you because you just have to do that. You just have to do that to be okay. But like other times, it's like now things have kind of shifted. There's a lot of blogs and pages and a lot of different things where it's like more accepted to talk about. But it's, even though I am part of that community, it's hard for me to fully make that shift. It's just like an interesting thing because it's like I feel like society kind of makes you, how many people, oh, you're like a super mom. It's like not really.
People just want to give you like the easy answers or tell
Or they're
you
just like,
those things. And so like they're trying to build you up, I think, but it's like, don't say that because you're denying what's really going on.
I couldn't do it. Well, what do you want me to do? Leave her at the fire station? Like, I have to do it. I have to get up and I have to do it. And I have to do, and I'm not talking about now, obviously, like, it's a lot different now. But when she was younger, like, it was just hard all the time. And it's like, I got to get up and do it. She's my kid. I got to take care of her. Like, it's just like, there's not really a choice. But then it's like it's almost like people like are perceiving you as this like strong super mom, but it's like
yeah,
and yeah, like yeah, and in a way it's true. You do become strong. You have to become resilient, but it's like that's just like one part. That's just like one part of it. That's just like
it's the
like
same
the
though.
outside.
It's the same as like masking for your mental health. And with
The same
anxiety and
exact thing.
depression, you like so you'll say it's okay, and then somebody will give you some compliment, knowing part of your struggle from before, and really you're crumbling inside. And then they're like, you answer, you're fine, things are going great, you get on with it. I mean, it's just culturally, you can't always unload in the entryway of work. How you doing? Great.
For me, I get a lot of anxiety around a lot of things, but like going to appointments. But like once I'm at that appointment, that person would have no clue that it took like everything in me to get to that doctor's appointment or whatever, because like that's where the masking comes on, and that's like I portray myself, and really part of that's like a defense of like I want to get in and out of there. And then when it comes to my kids and those things, it's like I want to sound sure of myself, so like they don't question me as a parent or whatever,
You're already short, so they think. I'm just kidding.
Who's this child mother? Okay. So I thought we'd go on to discuss outside of perceptions of other people, our perceptions of ourselves. So like, how do we see ourselves when we look in the mirror? I know we talked about that a little bit, like from the inner angle of that last time, but like, that ongoing battle, which has to do with both, is like how we see ourselves when we look in the mirror, how we perceive our bodies and our relationship with our bodies. I know sometime soon we're going to kind of talk about like the diet, weight loss culture, kind of stuff. But like, the last few years was like that body positivity thing. And I feel like, like all these celebrities, like it was kind of cool. We had like bigger celebrities and they were like, whatever, I love my body, you know what? And then they invented a drug called Ozempic or whatever. And now it's like, nope, skinny. We don't have to specifically talk about weight, but how you see yourself in the mirror and how that relates back to all that outer
Saw myself a lot thinner last Monday is all I can say.
Oh, shut up, Jen.
Oh, week is off the rails. I'll let someone else start.
For me, obviously, I'm very overweight, and that I think does affect the way I think about myself because I don't like the way that I look. And then it's like, I'm like, you don't like the way you look? but then you don't do anything to change it. I mean, I do try here and there, but then I kind of give up. So it's like, and then that just, I just kind of get down on myself about that, because if you don't like it, you could change it, but you don't change it. So it's like, it's just like a whole thing. And I really think a lot of it's tied into like, my mental health. Like sometimes I'm just not thinking about it and I'm not really that worried about it. And I'm just going on doing what I'm doing. And then other times it's like, it just depends like the certain situations I'm in. Like I feel I'm more uncomfortable and more noticeable. But like when we go on a plane, I have to get a seatbelt extender. Like that's like, it's just a little harsh reminder of like, Neil, I never ask her. Neil always has to ask, because it's like so embarrassing. And I know I'm not the only heavy person, but it's just like one of those things. And it really makes yourself, it just makes you feel bad about yourself, because there's such a emphasis, even though it's body positivity, it is changing. Like I do notice like with my kids, they're not as hard on themselves about like stuff like that. And they're just like, like my daughter cares, like nope, there's only body positivity over here. Like there's no body shaming around here. And I mean, my kids will go out with a crop top. They could care less. And it's good. Like I love seeing that change with like the kids that are coming up nowadays, because there's just not as much emphasis put on it. But that wasn't the way I grew up. So it's like in my own mind, I don't like the way that I necessarily look. And now I'm freaking getting old on top of it. So I'm like, I shouldn't have to be fat and old. Like this is not fair. I at least always had going for me that I looked young. I always joke that the fat just hides the wrinkles. But
A girl, it
but,
does. Okay. It
and
does.
sometimes it doesn't bother me as much as others. And I really think that also just ties into like all the other things that you're going through in your life. Like when things are really hard, it's just like another thing. When you're depressed, when things are hard, when your kid is like having a hard time, when you have money struggles, it's like all these things that are happening. I feel like it's just I have a more negative perception of myself, even though I look the same as when like maybe things are a little bit better and all that stuff's not happening. I'm not so hard on myself about it or harsh. It's kind of like, you only live once, eat the cake, get the iced coffee. I feel like it's just very complicated.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Hard. I think there's such a like you don't care until you like look in the mirror and then it's like, okay, why do I care now? Like, why am I putting myself down in this moment where it's like I was just enjoying life over the weekend, hanging out with family, eating food. I wasn't thinking about like what I'm putting in my body, all that stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
it's important what we put in our bodies, don't get me wrong, but like not counting the calories or worrying about this and this. And then like, and it's like, why do I have to like let the mirror ruin that for myself kind of thing?
The comparing, I think too, is like another thing for me. So like obviously we all meet up in Minnesota and we got our pictures taken, and then it's like I'm the biggest one. So it's just like in that moment, it's like and I try to like let it go. I try to, and you guys always help me and like encourage me and all that, and my family does and stuff like that too. So it's like I try to like let it go and not let it hold me back from doing things. I mean, the first time we did it, I literally cried. Like it's a hard thing for me, because then it's right in your face. I feel like in certain environments, you just think about it more, because like you might be looking around at other people more and thinking about how they perceive you, or because I don't perceive myself well, I think that they don't perceive me in that way. But like you said, in other environments where I'm in my element and I'm comfortable, then I'm not necessarily thinking about it. So it's just, I feel like it's like a lifelong process to come to kind of terms with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a moving target, constant, the balance of all of that. I feel for me, I have always been heavier, like a heavier girl in the friend group or heavier than I was last year. No, not really. I'm always like 230 pounds. I will say that my favorite thing about my self image is that I can flip it and reverse it. So, this one time I was talking to my friend about how much I weighed, and then we figured out that 230 pounds I mentioned that I have been almost my whole adult life is only 16.4 stones.
Sounds better. Looks better.
I mean, remember that, Jane?
Yep.
We figured that out together. I'm like, listen, I'm only 16 stone, so everybody else can suck it. My issues are not with the size of my jeans, because I'm like a size 14 to a size 18 jeans or pants, just depending. My issue is that my bottom half might be a 14 and my top half is still a size 20 or whatever. Like I've got a cockamamie shape, And like I mentioned in a prior episode or two, I feel like I learned to dress that. And so again, I've worked on my acceptance of my outer self. What happens to me now is that I have this image of what a Rachel is. And then I look in the mirror and she's like, I have ashy insides. I just feel like I'm gray and like my life source is tapped and my exhausted shows through my skin. So I feel like it's not about puffy or like overweight. It's just like straight depleted. Like I just feel haggard. But I'm like startled by the mirror. I'm like, whoa, shit, what happened to you? You've not slept in 84 years? Like,
I
what?
remember walking by the mirror going, like it just caught me off guard one day. And I was like,
Oh,
when did that happen?
shoot. Yeah.
Hmm.
And it's not like I feel like I'm like less worthy, but I'm like, dang, girl, you've had a FabFitFun enough to fill a whole closet. Why don't you exfoliate that? I don't know. Like, fix it.
Oh, I forgot about FabFitFun. I
And
feel
like
like,
I'm in self-care business before this life. Like
yeah.
I'm the one that's like exfoliating and dry brushing towards my heart. Now I'm like, did I use a pillowcase? I don't even know. Like, what's happening?
Well, I had my oldest at 27, 26 or 27, one of those. And the beginning was hard for us. Toddler, the baby years, it was really colicky, all that stuff. And like before that I was in my 20s, and I'll say I was very lucky that like I've grown up, I've always been like a very skinny person, and I know like the opposite. Like I have siblings that they've always just been bigger their whole lives. We ate the same crap. It's just bodies. And of course, after having kids, you're going to put on weight easier and things like that. And that was like hard for me, but it was really not even just weight wise, but it was like throughout those years, because they were so tough, I would go out and do things here and there, but it wasn't like I ever really looked at myself. And then I really feel like when things like settled for a moment, probably around like 5 for like a second, and I just looked at myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, like I'm just like jumping from hair color to hair color. I'm doing this, I'm doing that during all of this. And then when I settle, I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like I went from like mid 20s to like mid 30s in like a leap,
Yeah.
because I just feel like I wasn't around for those years. Like really, I was like in a funk. I was in a hard place mentally and, parenting wise. And so like how you guys are saying, like one day you walk past the mirror and you're like, oh, like, and part of it's just normal aging, but I just feel like I didn't get to like watch that aging process of myself.
Yeah.
And like so much like the beauty industry now is like fillers and this and that. And I'm like, well, I missed the boat on that. I'm paying for therapies and things like that. And so it's like a harsh reality to wake up to. And I feel like for me, like I had like acne really bad growing up. And so now I have like, I hate my skin. I hate this and this about myself. And I mean, you guys know, you guys like try to compliment me. And like, I just
Oh my
remember
God, I
that
thought
day,
you
like,
said you guys con me. I was like, what?
you guys do con me.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she's
Um,
like, "Oh yeah, wait until you guys see me in person." We're like, "Well, we're just gonna dunk you, so don't worry about it. You're gonna look
Yeah.
great when we're
Well,
done with
but
you."
I was gonna say I remember like the day Rachel being like, because you guys would like say nice things about me, which is very nice, and I would be like, okay, yeah, and then one day Rachel's like, oh, you really don't believe us, and I was like, no, like she thought I was being like humble, being like, oh no, 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 because I mean I
And then I almost flew to goddamn Denver with a mirror. Okay.
I
Here's
have
what a beautiful pen looks like.
I
Bitch.
got all the mirrors. I have magnifying mirrors. I look.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what other people tell you. It's really how you feel about yourself. Like it
Yeah, and
really
what like, and
doesn't.
that's how I see myself. Like I see all the flaws which we do in ourselves. It's like, what do you see in the mirror? Where it's like, what something that's the biggest deal to you may or may not, like
Yeah.
people may or not even care about, or like see that in yourself, or like you may think
And
you look a
or be
certain way and
attracted
like
to those
complain about
things.
that thing. Yeah. And then when they see it, they're like,
Like,
whatever.
like some people like, oh, my eyes are so big. And I'm like, I love big eyes. 'Cause my eyes are so little. And then like other people are like, oh, I love your eyes. Like they're blue. I love blue eyes. Like, and I'm like, well, you can't see them because my eyes are so squinty. But it's like what like somebody else sees like that you don't like is like sometimes what other people do like. It's just funny. But going on what Rachel said of like kind of being like the same for a long time, I think that's also my struggles because I was not always a big person. Like I was tiny. I was little. I was 5'8" and like 128 pounds. Like, and then I gained a lot of weight with
So
my
you
son
look
when
like me right now.
yes, just like that.
Great.
I gained 72 pounds with my son, and like I lost 40, and honestly, I was not that heavy. I was 30 pounds overweight, not 30 pounds overweight, because I definitely was not like I was like definitely probably underweight when I got pregnant with him. And plus I was, a teenager still. But I was probably like 20 pounds overweight, which I thought I was my size now in my mind. Like I look at
Yes.
pictures and I'm like, what's wrong
Oh,
with me? I look great.
teenage
Like,
body dysmorphia. If
Oh,
I could go back to
yeah.
the first time I
But
thought I
like I
was
did
fat,
have
are you kidding?
yeah, but I have a thing of like I do carry weight in my face. So even when like I wasn't super heavy, I had the weight in my face. And then that's all I see. Like that's all I would see. In my mind, I was like 250, 300 pounds. Like no, you weren't, bitch. You were 180 and you probably should weigh like 172. So like you were fine. And then I got pregnant with Alyssa. I gained 30 pounds, lost 30 pounds. And then through her diagnose, which I never really like put a thing on it because it was like a slow process, but I had gone to see a nutritionist and they're like, trying to like get it down. And like I gained 70 pounds the year she was diagnosed. And she's like, it's just your reaction to basically, because it's kind of like she's like, it's similar to a divorce or like what you would go through, if you lost someone, like some people lose and some people gain. Your metabolism and your body chemistry just changed throughout that process of what you went through. I never really lost, like I would lose like 20 pounds, gain 30, lose, it would just kind of go back and forth. And then, I got pregnant 2 more times. So like that didn't kind of help anything. And I've never like gone to a gym. Like that was just like an expense that we didn't have. I didn't have time for it. I didn't have someone to watch my kids. Like it just didn't even like really, you're eating so bad because it's like
you're
when you have
eating what's
when
left
you have a ton
over.
of kids.
Yeah, like you're
Yeah,
eating a
or
bag
like
of
you're
chips.
just eating on the run, or like
Yeah.
you're eating a bag of chips because like that's what you had time for like in that moment or whatever it is. So it's just like a lot of, things contribute to that. But I feel like it's just like when you've been small, I mean, now I've been heavy for a long time, but like, even like 15 years ago, like I was small for the first half of my life and then heavy. I think it's hard to like come to terms with that like change, that was kind of hard for me. And I was always like the tall skinny one, people would always be like, you're so tall and thin, like you should be a model, you're so tall and thin, do you play basketball? Those are the two things that I always got. And I'm like, okay.
Get that.
Now they're like, you're so tall and fat. I'm just kidding, nobody says that.
Like that meme, which is like my favorite meme, where it's like, I wish I was as fat as I was in that picture
Yes.
when I thought I was fat.
Yeah, literally though. Yeah,
I was like
it's just
155 wearing express jeans that day, stovepipe denim. Hello. Okay. I'd love to go back to that one. Thank you.
oh god, it's just so funny because it's like you just view it in such a different way. And then when you're running and you're momming and your hair's in a messy bun and like you're not putting makeup on, not that people have to put makeup on to be beautiful, but I'm not saying that, but it's like you're just doing all these other things to contribute to like not feeling like you look the greatest.
People are like,
And some
when is my Botox appointment? And I'm like, did I put deodorant on? We're just in like a different phase of this. I mean, I think
I see
the grind,
I see it
you know?
I see a picture and I'm like, who let me walk around like this? Like, what is wrong with you people?
Have you guys ever been at the store and like caught yourself in like the security? Like I'm sure I bet every girl at this table is like, I'm never gonna be that mom walking in sweats to Walmart, blah blah blah. And then here I am, and I'll catch myself in the thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what has
Remember
happened
when
to
I
me?
got this? Okay, there's two moments of my life that are like that. You all know about both of them. Remember when I was in Mesa, Arizona, and I got a speeding ticket, and the DMV sent me a picture of me like driving down French W, and I had more chins than hills to Sedona, and then it was just terrible. And then the second time I made that face, I'm on Jenn Dunn's page in the biggest group picture where everybody looks like Claudia Schiffer, and I look like whatever that green guy is in that movie about the space people. What's that guy? You know what I'm
Blew
saying?
it up. You blew your face up.
There's another photo of me from that trip that is just as bad. That is also
You made a t-shirt.
It is terrible. No, Jamie, your picture was banging, but I did it in 3D and it really you over. That's what happened.
Remember, ladies, the camera puts on 10 pounds.
Oh, she puts on more than that.
That camera puts on at least 100. I don't know what you're talking
I think another aspect for us, or for me at least, is social media, so social media obviously wasn't really a thing for me when I was younger. And then when I started doing Alyssa's page and then started showing, doing like, to do a live in the beginning, I was like, I can't do that. Who's gonna want to look at this face? You know what I mean? But they get to listen to this mouth. So I guess it's like a concession you have to make. And in my mind, like, it was just looking at yourself, that was like super uncomfortable for me at first, like just doing live, making videos, and then you have to look at yourself the whole time that you're speaking. Like, that was like that was that was torture in the beginning. I mean, now I'm like used to it. It doesn't bother me as much. But I feel like it ties into that thing where Jaime said, like, when you're in your house, with your family, like, you're not thinking about it. You do a Facebook Live. I mean, that stuff's on the internet forever. So I don't know.
Do you add to the problem by filtering yourself to no end, like I do on the Zoom? Or do you just act like real and ragged so that when people see you in public, you're like pleasantly plumper and less wrinkly?
Oh my gosh,
Well, I can tell you
about that the other day.
What?
This is my issue. I photograph better than I look in real life.
Oh, I look like a
I photograph
trashy bitch in a picture.
and I'm not kidding you. So many people, I think have I said this on here before or just to you guys? So many people have come up to me when they meet me in real life after like seeing me online and stuff like that. And I won't say necessarily with my blog or anything like that, but they'll be like, "You are so photogenic." Like, they'll say that to me, and
You're
I'm
a real butterface, Jaime.
you're like, thank you.
thank you. And they're not referencing a photo in that moment. They're like, "Oh, you're so photogenic," because it's like, "Oh, you're not as good looking as you look on the internet."
Jaime, what
Well,
they mean is you're an incredible photographer. When I take a picture of my kid, it looks like they're standing in grass. Yours have a castle behind them.
I
You're
will
so
say, like, my
photogenic.
blog doesn't completely count, and I will say, like, not even with that, because like a lot of my blog posts are usually filtered or edit of some sort, especially with my kids in them, because I feel like somehow, like, if I put in the watermark and like some weird gray filter over it, people won't try to take my photos and stuff as much. But like, this
Except
is
for Miss
outside.
McIsaac.
I'm not
McIsaac takes
editing
all your
except me.
pictures.
Oh yeah, Kimmy does take all my pictures, but that's okay. I've started doing that recently, but I noticed Kimmy was collecting my children's photos, but Kimmy can have them.
They're all up here. I'm just kidding. I told Rachel the story that, like, so people that are on TikTok, like, TikTok automatically puts a filter on you, so like it's already there. And it's great. I'm like, I look great on TikTok. I can get used to this. And then one day I'm doing a video on TikTok and I'm like, oh, I'm like, why do I look like this? And I'm like, if this is what I look like with the filter on, like, I'm really scared to take it off because I must have really gone downhill in the past few months without realizing it. And it comes to, in fact, the TikTok filter was off. It was not on. So
our views of ourselves are, I think, morphed because of that. Because I mean, I'll be honest, there's
I
days
do too.
if I'm doing a lot of stories on my thing, I'm looking in my camera more than I'm looking in my actual mirror. And like our selfie cameras on our phone, they're like, if you go into your settings, all of our selfie, I mean, some of us might know and have turned these off. All your selfie cameras are designed to make your face look smaller. They put a little filter on you that you can move up and down. And so like that's how we're seeing. And then when we look ourselves in the real mirror or like in a different photo,
Be
like
running to the selfie edit.
Just don't ever look in that camera. I'm just gonna tell you that right
you're like,
now.
oh, because like our idea of like not even how ourselves should look, but other people in general are supposed to look is so morphed now. A nice thing about the filters is that they've kind of calmed down, but now they're like so subtle that like, remember it was like always people had like the dog filter and this and that, but now it's like so subtle that it's like, oh, that's
my God.
how they really look.
I'm not
Girl,
on
there's
mute.
people in my industry that filter themselves. They look like they're AI generated. It's ridiculous. Like, girl, you don't look like that.
We
Other
can tell
people
that
take
you're
photos
good
of you
AI.
and you don't look like that. It's
Yes, I
ridiculous.
do. Yes, I do, Jen.
That's how Kimmy chooses to identify.
Yes.
I'm gonna identify as
I identify
yeah,
as an avatar. Have you seen our logo, people? I look great.
But it's hard because we like expect that now, like in general of how everyone should look. And it's like, I don't know if you guys saw on TikTok recently, there was this chick and she was like ranting. She's like, we shouldn't use filters anymore, blah, blah. But she's clearly had like her lips are huge, like all this filler and all
Oh.
like and everyone's like really dogging on her now because of all that. And it's like, yeah, you don't have you don't have to use actual filters because you have like
Bumper.
it's just where we're at. Anyway,
I mean, I feel like if it makes you feel better, then do it. Like you have fake eyelashes, you have a pound of makeup on, you know, all this stuff, your hair done, straightened, all this to make yourself look better. Well, what's the difference of a filter? You're
yeah,
just
and
using like
don't
a real life filter, not a camera one. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
whatever you
I mean,
feel
it's the same thing if somebody spends an hour to like do their makeup before they do a video. Like, I know it's not the same, but I'm just saying it's like, it's just making that person feel better. I don't have time for that or the skill.
Hey, if I'm doing I'll tell y'all right now, and then people know because I was joking about how the filters do not go all the way up my forehead because I have a big forehead. Another insecurity.
Well, like you move.
I'm not even that insecure about it, but if I'm not wearing makeup, 1000% there's a filter on there. Like I just
You know, Jamie, you used to do your lives and do your makeup with all these super impressive little tricks and brushes.
yeah, I
That
don't
was
do that
really
anymore.
impressive. Uh-huh.
I got two. I mean, part of it's being insecure, but part of it's like I don't know. I don't feel that wise.
Less to give.
Yeah, I need to do that.
Yeah.
Anyway, so with that was our discussion on outer self. Very enthralling, I hope. I hope you got a good laugh at us. We love to laugh at ourselves. I will say that at least.
Mhm.
We're starting this new thing with the podcast that we've talked about doing where we can all go around and give like one last thing, which is like up to a minute for each of us. If there's anything we want to vent about in general in life or something we feel like we didn't get to discuss during this episode, we can do it now. Just kind of a fun little thing. So does anyone want to go first?
Oh, I have a burning one last thing. I have a burner.
Okay. Rachel.
Listen, today I went to the Starbucks. I drove there myself, which is to say that I did not DoorDash because I was just trying to get out of the house. All right. This me make my effort. So I get out of my driveway. I do my mobile app so that I don't have to talk to the people when I order 6 shots because they're like, oh, Jesus, what do you need? An IV for that? I don't want to talk about it. So I hit the buttons. I drive. I take a right. I take a left. I'm like, oh, look, I've got a green light. This is the best day ever. I get to the Starbucks. The lady is so offended because my order's not come through, which is not my problem. And as she says, like, oh, Rachel, with 2 drinks, which, yeah, I did. Yes, I did. Okay. She says to me, oh, they've just come through. It'll be a while. I'm sorry. Bitch. It would be the same amount of time if I ordered them using my words right now, and you'd make them wrong, and I'd still have to wait for 8 shots to press. So just can you calm down and not give me some guff because your hitching the giddy up is happening in your app? I don't care. That's not my issue. That's my one last thing. It just pissed me off all day.
Well, I'm gonna say I'm happy that we have a logo, a new font to use with our new name and a new name. And it's all behind us. That's all I'm gonna say.
Done.
Gosh, Kimmy, airing it out. Jen, do you have anything?
Well, you know, I just pulled my kid out of public education today, but I'm going to save that for another day. One last thing. Tried. We didn't make it. On we go.
Actually, that really makes my barista problem seem like shit. Sorry.
I mean, I also made the very bad mistake of using my child's name out loud on the podcast when she was in earshot. So I don't really know if you'll hear it. I don't know if you'll hear any of my conversations. They might all have to be pulled out, but it's all right.
Jamie, what's your last one? One last thing.
Just piggyback off of Rachel's, my son's birthday party was this weekend at midday at Chuck E. Cheese, which was insane. Friday afternoon, I was on the phone with Rachel and I got a call from the cake place and they're like, hey, we're putting this green thing on the cake and we recommend you pick this up the day of the party because the sun might affect it, blah, blah. And I was like, oh, okay, I was supposed to pick it up that day, Friday. And I was like, well, it's tomorrow. The party's on Saturday. And she was like, okay, I could do it tomorrow. I was like, okay, can you have it ready at noon and we'll pick it up right before the party? She was like, yeah. So my sister went and picked up to go pick up the cake and hadn't even like been, like the cake was made, but they hadn't like decorated it all the way. And so my sister had to wait like 30 minutes. And then my poor little nephew had to miss like the first 15 minutes of the party, which wasn't the end of the world because, you know, your Chuck E. Cheese card goes for a certain time allotted. But I was really annoyed. I'm like, you called me. And now my poor sister had to wait for the cake because I had her run and pick it up and just.
Also, why with technology, why can you wrap a car in a graphic? How come you can fondant a cake on a Thursday and it's still good for the wedding on Saturday? But you're selling me a product in 2024 that gets like droopy oopy in 24 minutes?
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up.
I was just annoyed. And honestly, I should have just taken the droopy cake and put it in my fridge because
when it was convenient for you.
He just wanted the freaking emoji on top. It was an emoji cake. We had emoji. But it was a great party. And we had a lot of fun, and Chuck E. Cheese was insane that time of day, but it was like the only
You
time.
made it.
So-
And it's Monday afternoon and you don't even have a germ.
I'm still alive.
You made it through Chuck E. Cheese germs.
Woohoo. All right, everyone. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. We have a great interview with Zoe Potter, which is really cool. And we're going to talk about intuitive eating and kind of body stuff and all that jazz. So we'll see you then.
See you then.
Guys.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Talk Like a Mother Parenting Autism podcast. If you are enjoying our podcast, make sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. And if you'd like to support us, you can become a subscriber. Just check out the description of this episode. Give us a follow on Facebook and Instagram for more content, and we'll see you next time.